Welcome to the next episode of the Silver Nugget adventure. In this episode we'll be mainly concentrating on the water system. The water system is the most complicated system on the van, and it really is worth getting to know it before going away on your first trip. I'll be covering all the main areas in this video, and you may choose to fast forward to the bit that you prefer. We will be covering filling, hot water, the shower, draining down, water strategy, and finally, maintenance. If you like what we've been doing in these videos, please remember to subscribe.
So without further ado, let's look at filling the system. So first of all, the control panel is warning us, and the warning is that the water tank is empty. So you select the water tank, you can see it's flashing, indicating it's empty. We can also tell that the waste tank is empty. We're now going to begin filling. So when you first approach the water cap, you'll notice it spins continuously. This is the locked position. Insert the key, turn to the left. As you can see, the tank is now beginning to fill. Here we have the fuses and the water pump. Turn the water pump on by turning the switch here. It's extremely important that at no point do you allow the water system to run dry. If the water pump runs when the water system is dry, it can damage the water pump. If you hear a humming noise when you turn the tap on, it is suggested that the tank has run dry, and it's important at that point that you close the tap and turn off the water pump before refilling. In order to activate the water pump, lift the handle of the tap and the water will run through. In order to fill the hot water system, you need to turn the handle towards the hot side and then again allow the tap to run until the water runs freely. You now know that the boiler is full. There are two main electrical systems on board, 12 volt and 230 volt. The water heater will preferably choose the 230 volt system when it's available. This switch will happen automatically. Should the external power supply be lost, the van will automatically switch across to the 12 volt system in order to keep the water warm. The boiler is located underneath the cooker. You can see that there are two sides to it. This side is the 12 volt side, and this side is the 240 volt side. This is important as depending on which power source you are running, there is a separate thermostat up high on both sides to control the temperature of the water.
The water heater is switched on here.
This red light will indicate when water is heating up. Initially turn, and you hear a click to know that it's turned on. The first position is the frost protection, and as you continue to rotate you go through the various temperature until you are on the highest setting. In order to turn off, of course, you just rotate in the opposite direction. The dot on the front of the heater indicates which setting is selected. This is currently the off position. More difficult to film is the thermostat on the other side, but you can reach it easily with your hand, and the twist motion is the same. Once set, it is unlikely that you will change the positions of these thermostats much.
So Kat, while you've been working hard inside today, I've been busily getting involved with the van. I've filled it with water, and I'd just like you to try that tap for me. See what you think.
Have you done the hot water?
Maybe.
Really? Wow!
I know, it's really good. I know. There's actually steam coming off it. I think I might need to turn it down a little bit, but still, it is on the hottest setting, so we do have room for manoeuvre.
That is hot, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome!
But with the mixer tap, you can actually control that temperature, so you could make it just more...
Okay, that's really good, isn't it? Exciting!
Home from home.
If sub-zero temperatures are forecast, it is important that you make sure that the boiler remains on the freeze protection mode. This is easily done by switching the thermostat. On the other hand, if you're not going to use the system for a while, it is important that you learn how to drain down properly, and we'll be covering that in this video. Our version of the Ford Custom Nugget comes with a shower at the back of the van. In this version, it's only cold water here. It's easy to install and to use. You simply use a push connector to connect the hose, and there's one switch which turns on the water pump. You can control the shower then at the head end. Now that we've filled the system, let's look at draining down. The two levers in this cupboard operate the fresh water drainage. In order to use them, you simply turn them so that the tap is in line with the pipe for it to be open, and across the pipe in order to be closed. Both of these are now in the closed position. The white tap is used to drain down to the level that you can safely drive in other words 10 litres. By opening the tap, the water will begin to drain out of the vehicle and will continue to do so until there's only 10 litres left and you'll be able to safely drive around. If I close this now, the next valve is the main water drain down valve, and by opening that, I'm draining the main tank. Remember, in order to fully drain the system, you have to open the taps in both the hot and the cold water positions, but before you've done this, you have to switch off the water pumps and the boiler. Before draining the hot water system, you have to isolate the electricity supply. There are two ways of doing this, detailed in the manual. The first is to remove the fuse for the boiler and remove the fuse for the water pump. The fuse for the water pump is clearly labelled in the manual and is actually the third one along, the red one in this case. However, the manual is not as clear as to where the hot water boiler fuse is for the UK version of the Nugget. It suggests that you remove this panel and it is behind here. I have been unable to find this, and I will be contacting the Ford dealer to see if they know where it is. The alternative method is to ensure that the main switch is turned off and that the residual current circuit breaker is switched off by pushing the test button and ensuring it's in the off position. We've now effectively isolated the unit. We can now begin by draining the fresh water tank, opening the tap, and then opening the drain plug on the hot water system. Once there is no more water draining from the boiler, we can close the tap and then close the drain plug. Try to avoid overfilling the wastewater tank. In doing so, there will be an overflow, but this could cause environmental damage. On removing the plug, the wastewater drains down the waste pipe into the wastewater tank, and when you're ready to drain down, it is this lever that allows that to happen. It is easily accessed in the main cab in the corridor between the kitchen and the front seats. This is the closed position, and to drain down, we simply push the lever into the open position. Ensure you empty the wastewater into designated waste areas. These should be clearly indicated on the campsites that you visit. If you are not in such an area, you should be collecting the wastewater in some kind of carrying case that can then be disposed of in the usual sewage systems. Do not empty into rainwater drains. Now that both tanks have drained as much as they will in the static position, a little tip to get the last bit of fluid out of the tanks is to leave the drainage taps open and just take it for a short drive to get the last bits of water out of the tank. Ensure you only do this when there's very minimal water left in the tank, as you don't want to be a nuisance to other road users. So although these access ports are quite large and would allow you to put your hand in order to be able to sort of dry up any last bits of water, the reality is the tank shape means water would be well out of the way of your reach. So I think probably best bet is If you've been using the tanks and you're not going to be using them for a while and you want them to fully dry, I would ensure you drain them properly and then leave these open for a day or two to ensure that the whole thing aerates and dries before you then close it up to prevent any sort of dust or other elements getting into the tanks.
We're going to start by briefly considering your water options. Some people choose to use the water system on board purely for washing. Others choose to use it as a drinking source. This will largely depend on your circumstances and your wishes. In order to allow us to drink the water, we have to ensure that we maintain the tanks appropriately at all times and also decontaminate the system at regular intervals. There are products on the market, some of which will be covered in this video, to allow you to do this in a safe way without damaging any of the equipment. If you have a hot water system, you could damage the boiler if you use the incorrect product. For us personally, when deciding which strategy we'd like to use, will largely depend on which length of trip we are going on. If we are going on a day trip just for a few hours, we may find that the balance of taking bottled water more convenient than the time taken to fill and get the tanks ready for use. If we're going for a full day or an overnight trip, we might choose to fill the tank with the maximum permissible amount allowed for driving, which would be 10 litres. This is probably adequate for us to use during the day and will allow us to continue with our activities without worrying. As the trip is less than 24 hours away, it is likely that the water that we put in will remain drinkable as it would have been treated at the water treatment plant prior to us filling, as long as it's in a well-maintained tank. If you're going for a longer trip, it will largely depend on the location. If you're going to a campsite that has on-site water facilities, then you'll likely be able to refill your tank at regular intervals with water that has been treated from a water treatment plant, in which case you may decide to fill the tank with the amount of water you're likely to use in a 24-hour period and then just simply drain down each day and refill. This will allow you to continue without using any form of water purifier. If, however, you're going for a longer period or decide that you don't want to fill every day, you simply could add a preservative to the tank in order to keep the water fresh and drinkable for longer periods. Whatever strategy we choose, it is extremely important that we maintain our tanks on a regular basis in order that they stay clean and free from biofilms or other contaminants that could lead us to become unwell.
So the product that we'll be using to maintain our water system is PuraClean. It's a product used by lots of people with campervans and caravans. It essentially will purify and decontaminate the water system, ensuring that a biofilm hasn't set up. It's the first time we've used the system, so I'm going to use it to start with to make sure everything's clean. The Ford Custom Nugget comes with a 42-litre tank. PuraClean instruct that you would use 1 teaspoon for every 4.5 litres of water. So roughly I'm going to put about 9.5 teaspoons in to a water container. I'll mix that solution up and then I'll add it to the tank. I'll then use the hose pipe to fill the rest of the tank all the way up, and then I'll ensure that I draw the water through all of the pipes, including the shower hose and the main faucet, to ensure that all areas are decontaminated. It then has to remain in that way for at least an hour, and then we can drain down. It's been an hour now since the product has been in the tanks decontaminating, so the aim now is to drain this solution down, then close off all the valves, refill the tanks with fresh water, and drain that fresh water through all the pipes so that we can ensure that everything is in a fit state ready for us to use. Had the tanks been more contaminated than this, we should have left the product in for longer. Now, the instruction manual for the product will state exactly how long. It would range somewhere between 1 hour and 12 hours. The other product that we're likely to use when we're away on longer trips in order to maintain the purity of the water for an extended period is L-Sil. L-Sil is a treatment that you add to water and then it will keep it fresh. You have to make sure you follow the instructions very carefully, as it will depend on the type of water source that you're trying to purify as to how much you add. Full instructions are on the leaflet inside the box.
If you like what we've been doing in these videos, please remember to subscribe.